36. Lance Herschelsheimer led us along the paths of Herschelsheimer's Oriental Gardens back towards the junkyard. When we got to the tangled bushes and the wire fence, we ran into a little trouble. While we were inside the garden, the matter of being in two places, or existential planes, at once wasn't too difficult. After all, it was the same place in both worlds, and all we had to deal with was two seasons really, of Herschelsheimer's Oriental Gardens, sort of superimposed. From the edge of the gardens, we could see two different worlds, and that was altogether another sort of thing. We could see the junkyard and the little shack where Noel Wallaby stayed, but more or less the same place was a big tea house, the one we had seen glimpses of in Uncle Boris's film, the one that didn't exist anymore in our world. There was the highway, and there was a big Waka Waka forest growing right through the highway. There was a sort of path through the forest which ran right along Noel Wallaby's shack, which seemed just as solid as the Wakan trees around it. I felt, well, sort of carsick, dizzy. "Right this way, boys," Lawrence Herschelsheimer said. If we followed him, we would have had to walk through the solid walls of Noel Wallaby's junkyard shack and then out into the highway where the solid cars would mow us down. "Just a minute, Mr. Herschelsheimer," Aln Mndlshn said. "We have a little problem here." "What do you suppose we ought to do?" I asked. "I'm not sure," Aln Mndlshn said. He touched the wire fence which existed only in the Hogborough plane. Then he touched a wooden railing that existed only in the Waka Waka plane. "They're both solid," he said. "Do you realize something?" I asked. "What?" "We're not in two existential planes at once. We're trapped between two existential planes." "This may be serious," Aln Mndlshn said. "What seems to be the trouble?" Lawrence Herschelsheimer wanted to know. We explained it to him. "That's really a problem," Lawrence Herschelsheimer said. "Under ordinary circumstances, we don't feel, see, hear, smell, or taste anything from another plane of existence. Maybe once in a while we get a sort of faint impression, but that's all. Still, at the same time, activity in the other plane is going on all around, even through us. When you boys came here, you probably walked right through Waka Wakan trees and buildings and didn't even know it. Now everything feels solid. Am I right?" "Yes," Aln Mndlshn said. "What do you think we should do?" "I haven't the faintest idea," Lawrence Herschelsheimer said. "Of course, you two seem to be especially good at State 26. Maybe you should try using it to work this problem out. If not, I'll have to say goodbye. I can't be late for lunch, and we don't have very much time." It was certainly worth a try. We didn't like the idea of being left by Lawrence Herschelsheimer trapped between two existential planes, and the accursed thing, or whatever it was, apt to turn up at any moment. We went into State 26 and experimented with the solidity of objects. It didn't take very long to get results. We found we could tune ourselves like a fine tuning knob on a television set. We could tune Waka Waka down until it was almost invisible, just like a ghost in a TV picture. When we did that, the Wakan wooden railing, which could hardly be seen, was insubstantial as air. When we turned down Hogborough, the wild wire fence gradually dissolved until it was just a vague smudge before our eyes, and then we could pass our hands right through it. It took a few minutes to get used to doing this. Then Aln Mndlshn thought of something. "Mr. Herschelsheimer, when we tune out Waka Waka, do we become invisible?" "I was just about to remark to myself about that," Lawrence Herschelsheimer said. "You don't become entirely invisible. If I try real hard, I can just make out your outlines. But if I wasn't sure you were there, I'd pay no attention to you. You just become sort of thick planes in the air." "This may come in handy later," Aln Mndlshn said to me. We surprised Noel Wallaby by appearing and vanishing before his eyes. When we invisibly left his junkyard, he was cleaning his eyeglasses with the tail of his shirt and talking excitedly to his dog, Faffer. The forest through which Aln Mndlshn and I followed Lawrence Herschelsheimer was not open and park-like Herschelsheimer's Oriental Gardens. It was sort of dark. The trees were tall and grew close together. The forest floor was all tangled roots and rotten leaves, and wherever there was dirt it was black and slippery and smelled funny. There was a cold wind blowing through the forest. Sometimes it was so dark we could hardly see where to put our feet. I fell down a few times, and so did Aln Mndlshn. This place is called the Mushu Forest, Lawrence Herschelsheimer said. It got its name from a Chinese restaurant that existed here a long time ago. Nobody remembers the name of the Chinese restaurant, but Mushu pork was one of the dishes they served there. There was a Chinese restaurant in the middle of the forest? Aln Mndlshn asked. Oh, there's quite a bit in this forest, as you'll see later on, Lawrence Herschelsheimer said. It's a nice place, really, cool in the summer, easy to hide in, and the dreadful destroyer doesn't come here very often. It doesn't like dim places, just bright sun and total darkness. When Lawrence Herschelsheimer said the word darkness, he sort of shuddered. About this dreadful destroyer, I said. Yes, the demon of the darkness, Lawrence Herschelsheimer interrupted. I prefer that we not discuss that particular topic right now. Later, if you don't mind. Well, will you tell us this? Aln Mndlshn asked. Does everyone live out here in the woods? Don't you have any cities? Oh ho, ha ha, hoo hoo, Lawrence Herschelsheimer said. We don't have any cities? Don't we have any cities? Hee hee, ho ha, ho ho. He didn't sound as though he was laughing. He just said the words ho ho and so forth. We have a city. We have a greatest city in this and any other world. We have a city. Lenny the Great, Lenny the Rich, Lenny the Beautiful. The city is named Lenny? I asked. Yes, Lawrence Herschelsheimer said. You think that's funny? You think it's a funny name for a city? And I suppose you think Chicago is a pretty name. Lenny is the name of our great city. It is named after the bravest man ever to live in Waka Waka. Are you taking us to the city? To Lenny? I asked. Well, actually, almost no one ever goes to Lenny anymore, unless they have to. People live, sort of, in the suburbs now. Well, where are you taking us? Aln Mndlshn asked. I'm taking you to my cave, Lawrence Herschelsheimer said. I share a cave with a lot of other people. They're very nice. You'll see. We're almost there now. For some time I had been pretty sure that pairs of eyes were watching us through the heavy underbrush. Once or twice I thought I saw someone, or something, darting through the forest ahead of us. This had worried me, especially until Lawrence Herschelsheimer told us that the dismal dreadfulness, or whatever it called, didn't like the forest. But someone was watching us. I was sure of that when I saw Lawrence Herschelsheimer disappear into a pit someone had dug in the forest path, and then carefully covered with leaves.